Okay, so it's great to be here. It's great seeing you. I want to say my first thanks to Rafael Fogel and for the people for organizing all of this. This is amazing. Please give them big applause. I'm with the Rails community in Israel since the beginning. I started Rails in 2005. We started the community in 2007. And only when the people came, these events started. So I really appreciate it, and I think they're doing amazing things for the community in Israel. Thank you. That's my personal thanks. So I'm going to speak about the dark side of single-page applications. I'm Dor. I work for FTB Pro. It's an amazing, amazing site. You'll hear about it more later. My background is 10 years in web development, 8 years in Rails. I worked for 4 years in Seeking Alpha, which is the best site in the world for finance. And I'm working in the last year in FTB Pro. Had some adventure with Crossrider. You can applaud yourself, everything. And everyone are awesome. So thank you. That's what I said. Not everything that I wrote here is true. I'm not really 31, only today, no? So this is Michal. I'm embarrassing her now. She's sitting here. She's with Rails Girls. She's also doing Rails. So. Okay, that's FTB Pro. We have almost 30 million page views a month. We're about football. We have sections for all the European leagues, at least the interesting ones. And we're also covering Mexico and Argentina. And we also are on mobile. Now, what am I speaking about? Is there anyone here that doesn't have any idea what single page application is? Raise your hand if you don't know. Let's try it again. Now raise your hand if you do know. Okay? Oh, that's much better. It makes my job much easier. So web's evolution. We all know that web applications are much more sophisticated than it used to be. I always give the example of Gmail. Gmail is like amazing. You just start this thing and boom, in 5 seconds you have a full application that you can use. It's fast, it's smart, it's convenient, it's amazing. And we all want to be like just like Gmail, right? So Gmail is a single page application. What allows us to create this stuff today is that the browser is much more amazing. The JavaScript engines are much stronger and faster, and we can just play with it. Think about how Hotmail looked like 10 years ago. It was a disaster, yeah, right? You clicked the email, and then it loaded, and then you saw your email, and if you wanted to click back, not fun. So today we can build single-page applications with the speed of the web, the speed of the browsers. We have Ajax and sockets, which give us amazing technological opportunities. And we have a lot of MV star frameworks. Like we heard Yuda Katz's lecture about Ember earlier. We have Angular that everyone is speaking about. We personally use Backbone. So, single-page application. It's a self-contained web page. It means that you don't go out of your web page. You have the best UI, but it's really sleek. It's complex, but you can do it with a lot of happiness. And what I really like about it is that it allows you to use client-side technologies for the client side. Personally, I don't like turbolinks. I don't like even old Rails when you write your template, your partials using the server. I find some inconvenience there. It's not my taste. I prefer to let JavaScript handle whatever is on the browser. It's a matter of a personal taste, I admit it. I wrote here MVC 2.0. No one knows this term. I just wrote it because I think that there's a new revolution that happens now. When Rails went out, one of the big revolutions that it brought us was this nice and very dogmatic separation. That's the model, that's the view, and that's the controller. So it's much easier to think about things, to separate the work between different developers, or even with myself, I can put a different hat. Now I'm working on the model, I'm a database master, now I'm on the view, HTML, CSS, etc. And controller, well, controller is shit, but that's what we have. So I think of what happens with single-page applications like a revolution in that term, and we will get back to it in a few slides. Another advantage that I wrote here is that single page application is the right user experience for mobile. When you're using a mobile device, a tablet, or your phone with an application, and then you go to the web and everything just reloads, and it reloads slow, it's a bummer. So you expect it to act the same as your applications, or you would like, you're comparing it to it. And when you're doing a single page application on your website, you can simulate the same feel, if you do it smart, at least, or not totally foolish. There's a link here to where the concept of single page application was first introduced in 2002. I don't know how many of you were in this field back then, but what we used then to do some of this magic, black magic, is using iframes that loaded JavaScript that manipulated the top page, the top window. It was really ugly, and this is what we had before Ajax. So you can go there. It's really interesting to see what they spoke about. So we chose Backbone. Anyone here never heard about Backbone? Never heard? Okay, only you. Backbone is a very light MV star, MV something framework. We wanted something very small because we knew we were going to customize it a lot and change it. And if we went with Ember or Angular, it was already very full and had its own way. So we knew that for our solution, which is content website, we're not a social network, maybe a bit. We're not a real application, maybe a bit, but we are totally a content website. We knew that Backbone could do the job, and it did it great. Again, we modified it a lot, but that's what you used. But by all means, look at Ember and look at the Angular. They should be amazing. Presenters. So what are presenters? The way that we build our website, we have for every web unit, everything that's on the page has several files that describe it. It has the template, which is the HTML. It has the view, which manages the connection between the HTML and the model. And we have a presenter. A presenter sits on the Rails side, on the server side. All those three files sit on the client side. And the way we did it is just that the presenter is in charge of getting all the data for the model that later brings it to the view that orders it inside the template. Now, what does it allow us? It allows us to have a much better separation. This is the MV something that I spoke about, the new MVC. You can look at the code. This is the CoffeeScript code that we use for the view, for Backbone view. Above it, you have the Rails code used for the presenter. I love CoffeeScript, really. And look how similar they are. It's really easy to define, okay, this is the component, this is what we show, and this is where we get the data from. Now, on top of everything, what we did is, when we look at on routing, even in Rails, on routing and controllers, sometimes it looks like they're doing nothing because we're saying slim controllers and routes are already small. So you just write a little line in the route, go to this controller to this action. And inside the controller, you're writing a few lines, okay, take this data and move on to the view. So it's like sometimes no real need for them. What did we do? We inside the templates, we are defining the routes that are going to serve these templates. So this league page, this is the way that you get there. These are all the different URLs that will take you to the league page. And we define it inside the template. We read the template, our Backbone reads the template and creates the routes file automatically. It allows us to really speed up development and make it much more fun because you don't have these lousy, useless files that really are not needed. You have everything really minimal, what you need. What I would say is that working with presenters, working with this way of creating a class for every web component in the page, I would also recommend it anyhow. I mean, you don't have to have a single page application to use this method of bringing data. instead of having a really fat model, it allows you to have a file for each web component where you just manage whatever you need there. It's easier to test. It's easier to collaborate on this file and use it. Anyone here uses presenters in his code? Or you just, I see only one hand. You all use Rails the Rails way. You have like fat models, skinny controllers, and you're happy. No. Anyone wants to remark on that? Sorry? Serializers. Okay. I heard something about Draper earlier, right? I heard something about Draper also earlier. Anyone here using Draper? No. So, we're also using pipe. What's pipe? When you look at the web page, I'll give you an example. I just load our website. Okay, so this is ftbpro.com. This is what I call a web component, just a part of the website, part of the page that is self-managed. So what happens in regular backbone is that each part, each box, each unit is self-managed. And it has its own way of sending AJAX requests to RESTful services on the website. Which means that if on a page like this, we'll have like 20 different components, we'll have 20 different AJAX calls to the server, which is like, it's awful. It's awful both on the client side, because the browser will have to wait for 20 calls to return, and we know there is a limit to the amount of concurrent connections, and AJAX is also CPU savvy, and it's slow, and also on the server, because why can't we just make one call? In classic Rails or classic web development frameworks, you're doing one call to the server, take all the data, and give it to the view, and it writes everything, right? So what we did is pipe. What is pipe? All those models, all those units are not talking directly with AJAX. They are talking with a class called pipe. And telling him, okay, we need this data and this data and this data. We have the similar articles. We have the top articles. We have the recommended users, etc., etc., etc. And they're all talking with pipe. Pipe is just gathering all the requests. And when he gets the signal that everyone finished requesting, he's doing one call to the server. One call to the server. The server splits all these calls to the different presenters, give them the parameters from the URL, does the queries, and returns it to the pipe on the server. And the pipes on the server send it back to the pipe on the client that later gives it to each one of the models. And so we did one request instead of all those little requests that are fast for themselves, but there are many. We did one swift request. This is pretty amazing. It allows us much more things that usually you can do. One of the things which is important to say is that when we're querying using pipe, we will never use cookie data to query. What do I mean? It means that if I know that the user likes Barcelona and I want to show him articles about Barcelona, on the URL I will write like this user likes equals Barcelona. So the URL himself recognizes what the user likes. I will never say on the server, okay, user find params, user find cookie ID dot what themes does he like, etc., etc. Because this is data which is not described by the URL. Why do you think we're doing it this way? You have any idea? If you're still with me, you have any idea why we must have everything in the URL? Amir. That's right. I gave you a tip. So we are big fans of CDN. We are big fans of CDN. We try to use CDN for everything. Anyone here that doesn't know what CDN is, just raise your hand. I will say it. Okay. Okay. So CDN is what's called the content delivery network. Like Akamai is the biggest CDN that everyone knows. Kutendo was a great CDN that Akamai bought and destroyed. So what happens when you use CDN? It's a caching mechanism. You put it between the client and your server. You put it in the middle, and every call that goes to your website goes there first. Now, according to a set of rules that you can define on the CDN, depends how smart it is, it caches the calls, and after the first user made the call, all the other users will get the call from the CDN. And why is it distributed? Because if you go to Ynet, for example, probably after Walla, it's the most popular website in Israel. If you go to Ynet, boom, it goes up immediately. Why? Because the CDN companies, they have many distributed servers. Akamai, for instance, that are working with Ynet, they have a server in each ISP in Israel, which means that when you're going to Ynet, you're actually getting the response from your ISP. It's like you were connected with a wire to Ynet servers directly. It can't be any faster. Okay, this is an amazing solution. I think everyone are using it. Everyone which is big enough and serves a lot of static calls. What we are doing, we are working with Edgecast, which are an amazing CDN. We just moved there a few months ago. What they allow us is an amazing API where they cache our pages, but they give us an API to purge these caches when we feel like that. And it purges really quick, like a few seconds. So for example, let me show you this. This is the website. Everything is on the CDN. Now we featured a new article there. We just do an API call to Edgecast servers. We tell them, okay, trash this page. So they remove the page from their servers, and the next call takes it again from our servers, saves it, and next users will get it from the cache very fast. So not only did the users enjoy much faster experience because the servers are very close to them, there's no latency, or the latency is minimal, also our servers are enjoying because no user is coming there. The difference between using CDN or not using CDN when it's possible is amazing. It just flattens all the load on the servers. We went from, I think we saved like 10, 15 times. 8 times. We're now with 8 times less CPU than we used to have. And twice as lower. So you heard it. It's like 16th of what we used. And everything is manageable. It means that you're not sending it to the CDN and then, I hope it will refresh it someday. You control everything. It's another layer that you add to your application. Now, what we are doing, this is why we got to this point now and not earlier, is that all our AJAX calls are cached on the CDN. This is why we need to have the URL describe exactly what we want to get and not have the same URL return different results for different users, which means the site can be blazing fast. I'm afraid of showing it now because I don't know how well the internet is here, but I will try anyway. Okay, so this came from the CDN. This call never came to our servers. When I click it, it goes to the CDN. Was it fast? Yes? Yes, I want to hear you. Yes, we worked really hard. I came here and we worked for the last half a year to make it work so fast. So, מה להעביר? Okay. Amazing. Just amazing. What a blast. Makes you want to love football, even that you're a golf player or something. Can do it all day, guys. Just stop me when it's getting boring.
Getting boring.
Did I ask you? I didn't ask you, right? Thank you. You have the Saturday shift, motherfucker. Generators. So we said that here every web component has a few files that describe it. We have the template, which describes the HTML. We have the view, which in MV Star, the view kind of replaces the controller in the client side in some sense. And we have the model that manages the data. So we have 3 files on the JavaScript. We have another file on the server, which is the presenter. And we have the tests for all of these. So it's a stack, right? It's like when you scaffold, you see all those files showing up in your Rails folder. Even if you want to create a minor table, this is the same case here. What do you do every time you're going, when you want to create a new component, what will you do? Usually, lazy developers like myself, what we do, we're going to the folder of these files, and you start copying a component that looks nice, or the first one in the list of files. This is how we work, and then we start modifying to fit our needs, and everything is great. Now, this is lousy. Why? Because maybe we copied the component, which is the worst ever written in our system. So this is why it's important to always have some mutual standards, some high standards, some place where you say, okay, this is the way you write the views, this is the way you write the models, this is the way you write the presenters, and this is what Scaffold actually gives us, what Scaffold in classic Rails gives us. What did we do? We wrote generators. We wrote a scaffolder with Yeoman. Yeoman is an amazing tool for JavaScript. You should go and read all about it because I have no idea what it does other than generators. And what it creates for us is all these little files. And every time we need to upgrade something in our system or architecture or something that should go into these files, we can just go to these files that Yeoman later uses, modify it, and then write, okay, Yeoman, generate, similar articles for bars of fans, enter, pack. You have all the files you need to work on this web component. This is really cool. This is really nice, including test files and everything. It allows you faster development. It sets a standard. There's a link here to our blog where you can read Igor's post, Igor Goldny post about how we did it and do it yourself with a lot of passion. Enter the dark side. So, I promised you, what was the name of the lecture? Remind me? Oh, Shmueli, great, thank you so much. So, not everything is bright, not everything is shiny. There's a big dark side to single page application. Actually, up until now, it was more like an introduction to single page application and telling you some of the sweet stuff we did, but there's also a lot of sourness that we had to handle. And that's where we are. That's where we are now in the lecture. Caveats. If in single page application, the HTML contains virtually nothing. Most of the stuff is coming from JavaScript, and the data is coming by Ajax. So actually, when Google comes to the website, I'm saying Google because no other bot really matters, right? No other search engine really matters. We all use Google. Anyone here uses Bing? Good. I'm not surprised. So how will Google read the pages if there's no content? The first load can be really slow. Why? Because you're waiting for an Ajax. Maybe you're not using CDN like ourselves. Maybe you're using CDN, but your JavaScript files are really heavy. So by the time the Ajax calls is going to bring the data, it takes some time. So there are many factors that change the load of the first page. Actually, if you're putting an Ajax loader, there are many companies doing it. It's really ugly. Unless you're some Grooveshark or Gmail or some amazing application which is really an application where you spend time, then you can say, okay, I can live with this Ajax loader. If you're a content website like FTP Pro or Seeking Alpha or Huffington Post or whatever, then you can't do it. This Ajax loader is ugly. So what do? You want the first page to boom, to go up really fast, not just the nice arrows after it was loaded. What do you do with it? And mobile. This is so important. One of the things that we wanted to achieve when we worked on a single page application is to stop working both on ftbpro.com and mobile ftbpro.com. We had this, m.ftbpro.com, this trick that companies do. So every time we need to change something on the website, we need to change something on the mobile website, and it's just redundant. And we wanted a way out of it. So we made everything Responsive, thank you. We made everything responsive, all the CSS is responsive, but the CPU is killing us because those little devices, mine is not little, okay? But all those little devices, they don't have a lot of CPU power. So when all these Ajexes and images and everything is starting on the device to load, it kills it. It happens, but it takes a while. It's much slower than on desktop. What do you do with it? That's the time that you're supposed to be really disappointed with the solution of single-page application. Think, oh, it's a bummer. We should never go this way. But that's why you came here. There's a solution. Okay? That's what Yoda said. So rendering on the server. It means we did a single-page application. Everything is live on the browser. And then we want to step back and bring it from the server on the first load. It's so weird, right? Like, why that just don't work with partials and everything like in normal ways? What's up with you? So it's really weird. But there's a way that makes it work really without pain. For us, it was a little pain to discover it. But there's a way. So there are a few ways, actually. You can use, for Google have an API for these kind of pages. You're adding this meta tag. What's the name of the meta tag? Remember? Fragment. You add this meta tag, fragment, to your pages, and then when Google sees it, it goes to the same URL, but it adds question mark, escape fragment equals something. And you on your Nginx or web server, you need to route this thing to a Phantom.js server. You all know Phantom.js? Do I need to explain what Phantom is? Raise your hand, please. I want you to understand. So Phantom.js is like, it's a browser. Phantom is a browser. It's a headless browser. It's like, it just runs on the server. You can install it on Linux, on Mac, servers, far away, in Amazon or whatever. And you can give it a URL. It renders the URL and gives you back the HTML. There are also other amazing things that you can do with Phantom. For example, Casper. It's a tool for testing with browser. It really, you can really program it, tell it to do all kinds of things. Also scraping. We're also using it for scraping, for weird stuff. So what you're doing in the single page application, you're giving this meta tag. Google comes, sees the meta tag, changes the URL, and does another query. And then you put a Phantom.js there. So the query is coming, it talks with the Phantom, Phantom is rendering, return the rendered output and give it to Google. We heard a lot of recommendations saying not to do it, that it's not working well, that Google doesn't like this. It's a crap, do it, it works wonderfully, Google loves it. That's the way to do it. Now, there's another solution, Jader. Jader is a project by Zohar Arad. He's one of the best open source experts I know. He's an Israeli. Jader is a gem that allows you to use your Jade. We're using Jade. It's like Hamel, for whom of you that doesn't know. It's like Hamel for JavaScript. It allows you to use those Jade templates on the server, not just on the client, but both on the server, and it renders everything. So you can use all your code as it was, and it renders it on the server. It has some disadvantages that the most painful one is that it's that slow. With Jader, it took us, for this page that I showed you, this league page, it took like 10 or 15 seconds to render, which is unacceptable. Even if you use some CDN caching, this is unacceptable. And we had to ditch it real fast. So you can use it, but really with caution, and test what you're doing. So you won't use it the way that we did, which makes it slow. This is the essence of the gem, but if you might need it, look at it, but with real great caution. How much time? 2 minutes? Let's make it 5. Okay. So we were using, this is Jader, I just spoke about. The classic way to work with Phantom.js, this is really important. The classic way is to have some server on the side, render things through the Phantom, going to the Rails, and it pushes it, let's say, to memcached, and then when the client comes, it gives him the file from the memcached. This is the classic way. We used it in the project that I did for Crossrider store. There's also Brombone that does it for you. We try to be smarter. We try to be smarter, not do the obvious, and use it as a middleware. We say, let's use Phantom.js not just for Google, not just for the escape fragment, let's also use it for our users. Every call that comes, and you remember that we are cached with CDN, which means that not all the calls are coming to a server, we will throw it to Phantom.js, it will render it from Rails, it will cache it and send it to the client. Actually, it didn't work. We had to revert it. We deployed to production. We reverted after a minute. After a month of load testing and everything, because Phantom is still experimental, it doesn't stand the load. Now, what we used, even though we used the Phantom Manager, you can say it's an open source project that we released. Use it. If you're going to use Phantom, you must use it. It allows you to manage multiple instances, and you have to use it if you're going to use Phantom on production. I warn you, use it. Else, you will have great pain. So we ditched this solution, and what we ultimately did, and this is stable, is create this layer inside Rails. When a call comes from the client, it goes to Rails. Rails is going to Phantom. Rails, not the Nginx. Rails is going to Phantom. It tells Phantom, okay, can you render this page? Phantom is then going back to Rails, does the request, tries to render the page. Remember, this is a headless browser. It's just like speaking with a browser. If it times out, it means that it took more than 2 seconds, which is not acceptable. We're telling the Rails, okay, just send the single page application as it is. Don't render everything, because user experience is the thing which is most important for us. Since we launched this solution, we never had one time that it happened. Okay, it's stable. So this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. If you don't want to use, I don't know, Node, this is the way to do it. Maybe there are other ways, but this works. This is real. It was written with blood. This is the code here, okay? If you want to do single page application, have your first page load really fast and not worry about SEO, you just take it. We'll tell you all you need to use it. This is working. Caching solutions. So one other thing that we did, we are using, and this is really the end, so thank you for your patience. We're using local storage to cache our data on the client side. When the page loads, it puts in the local storage all the data that was brought from the presenters. So later, if you go back to the page, we're not doing an AJAX request. It's just there, and it's working fine. The CDN I was speaking about a lot. It's amazing. Use it. The memcache, we're using memcache for the Phantom that I showed earlier. It also allows you to lower the load on the Phantom. We use Redis for the presenters. This is amazing because we're caching each presenter in Redis, each data that it has, for example, similar articles for Barcelona. At the moment that there's a new article featured for Barcelona, the model, the post model, is sweeping this cache in Redis, which means that you can say that what we are doing is creating some kind of database with self-managed cache and index. We're not just querying once every 50 minutes, like caching for the next 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Everything is live. When there's some change, we're removing the data from the Redis. We are doing an API call to the CDN. It allows us to have the load of a static website, but with a dynamic website. And there's another bonus. It really has nothing to do with SPA, but we are not doing nearly any queries to SQL when the user visits us. We are doing all the queries to Elasticsearch and to Neo4j, which are amazing databases. Every time we do a save action on the models, we save the data both to Elasticsearch and to Neo4j. And when there's a call from the user and it's not cached in the Redis, we're taking it from there, so our SQL really rests. When we started, the CPU of the SQL was almost always nearly on 100%. These days, it's like 2%. The CPU is like on 2%, and on low times, it reaches 20%. You all know how hard it is to optimize database queries. You all know how join queries are expensive and ugly to write and ugly to manage. So just don't go there. And for God's sake, stop using SQL. If there's something I want to see about Rails, it's just stop using SQL. It's an awful methodology, and there are so many great other databases, and usually we don't really need transactions, and there are other options when we do. So whenever you can, don't use it. Everything is amazing. We have a faster UX, the web server REST, database REST. Development is much faster. The developers are much happier, right? You're happy? That was happiness, guys. That was happiness. You know it when you see it. We have full control of our caching tiers, all those different tiers. We are, something I really like, and I told you earlier, we rule the client side with the client-side technology. No more server to write HTML or to manipulate JavaScript. We're using JavaScript to rule the browser. I think this is the right way to do it. This is opinionated, but because it's my opinion, then it's true. And we unify the mobile web with the desktop web, which I talked about later. Now, what you can see here is a graph. You can see that it goes down, but actually it's a graph from the crisis in 2008, the economic crisis. I just thought it'll be hilarious to show it, and you will assume that it's our servers, though it is not. So you were assuming. And assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups, right? Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.